what I think is a mind-boggling stat. I think.
All right.
Mississippi State, in the second half, ran a total of 23 plays. Right?
Okay.
They ran,
I don't know.
they ran 8 plays in the third quarter. 3 runs and 5 pass attempts. And in the fourth quarter, they had 5 rush attempts and 10 pass attempts. So 15 plus 8 is 23.
Yeah.
Mississippi State averaged 1.2 points per play run in the second half.
It's pretty efficient.
They averaged better than a point per play run in the second half of that ballgame.
Right.
This is a weird game if you didn't watch it to try and know what happened. If you look at the stat sheet from this game, you, of course, see a final score at 42-24. But time of possession, it's pretty close to even. A&M had it for 31 minutes. Mississippi State had it for 29 minutes. Texas A&M had more first downs. Rushing yardage, really close. Mississippi State rushed it for 8 yards more. Passing yardage, Mississippi State was about 70 yards more. Total yardage, 90 roughly total?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't describe the way this game was dominated, and it's hard to wrap your mind around running 23 plays in the second half but scoring 28 points.
Yeah, a couple of defensive and a special teams touchdown.
Yes. Yeah, no. Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. Hey, Dad, I need you to pull out your paintbrush and paint with words the picture of what you saw unfold in Starkville on Saturday.
Total domination. In all 3 phases of the game, which has never happened under Mike Leach, has always been an error here or there. Not a fast start, because it was nothing after the first quarter. But State got the lead and never gave it back and was never in doubt. Again, we've been talking for 3 years about Mike Leach team starting slow. Didn't really happen today, or on Saturday, I guess I should say. Will Rogers, as efficient as ever. State's offensive line, best performance all year long. No sacks, and then they get 6 yards a carry, 140 yards rushing. I mean, you just don't expect that from Mississippi State. You just don't. All 3 running backs who ran the ball did so pretty effectively. They spread the ball around effectively. You saw a new face this week. Justin Robinson had 6 catches. You saw Tulu Griffin get the ball. You saw Ra Thomas. Obviously, he had the long touchdown catch. Defensively, everything Arnett wanted to do kind of worked. He was able to keep flushing Johnson and then King later in the game and forcing him into bad throws. The secondary played well. And then on special teams, you had a missed field goal, but you punted the ball well. Your kickoff coverage was pretty good. I mean, it was just as complete a performance as Mississippi State has ever put together under Mike Leach. And like you said, the score, I mean, they got that late touchdown. State missed a field goal. It could have been much worse. I was really surprised when State got the ball back after the onside kick attempt to make it after it was 42-24. They still had like a minute and some change there. I thought Leach might try to add on. I really got the impression he was feeling his oats a little bit on Saturday.
You wish he had?
It would have been funny. Might as well get A&M ready for what's going to happen this weekend to them in Alabama.
I want this conversation to be about Mississippi State, but I do have a bigger picture question. How close is A&M to quitting? Because
they did the second half of that game.
Yeah,
fourth quarter.
I don't think it's going to be particularly close in Tuscaloosa this Saturday. Then they get an open date. If Texas A&M coming off the open date goes to South Carolina and somehow manages to lose that game, are they done? Like done?
I think so. Yeah, the question becomes, how painful does it have to become for somebody to say, okay, I have $100 million?
Do you know how much money that is?
That's got to be pretty painful. That's got to be pretty painful. You got to really want it at that point. But the problem is this, and I Josh Pate says it over and over again. It's not a problem you can fix in season. You got to change what you're doing offensively. You can't just in the middle of the season say, all right, let's go hire a coordinator. Let's give him the play calling duties, and we're going to change. You can't. You just got to get through this.
All right, so along those lines, Nick Saban has every reason to have the biggest ego in all of college football. And I'm sure he's got a big ego. But he has been willing to change and to evolve. Is Jimbo Fisher, who has had success with his offense, does he have the ability to say, you know what we're doing isn't working anymore, we're going to change, we're going to evolve? And go out and hire an offensive coordinator?
I say it all the time on the show, on the podcast, just in regular conversation, that so many coaches would rather lose their way than win somebody else's. Saban is the opposite of that. He'll do whatever he has to do. If you told him that, hey, wearing pink shirts and green pants increases your chance of winning, he'd do it. He'd show up in a pink shirt and green pants every day.
He'd pull out that sport coat he wears at the spring game every year.
Yes. Yeah. So does Jimbo Fisher, does he want to win or does he want to call plays? That's the question for Jimbo Fisher. Do you want to win games? You have elite talent. At almost every position, you got a 4-star, 5-star kid. You got all the money in the world backing you up. Why? What are you going to do?
I did not intend for this to be a conversation about A&M, but I wanted to kind of work that in. 24 rushing attempts, 144 yards for Mississippi State. Dylan Johnson goes 14 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown. Woody Marks carries it 7 times for 54 yards. Price carries it 3 times for 22 yards. I don't even know if Mississippi State has to run it this way. But the threat of them running it this way kind of makes everything else click, right?
Yeah, and Chase in Columbus said the same thing on the text line, that it's the threat, right? It doesn't matter if they only have 15 carries, if they're getting 6 yards a carry. It's just if they know that they can run the ball and get the yardage they want, then you're in trouble. And that's if you watch the first half of that game, maybe into the third quarter, Rodgers it's everything we make fun of, right? Rodgers is just dinking and dunking. He's keeping it safe. He's keeping it, I think at one point he had 25 completions for 170 yards. But State's able to run the football. They're running the ball effectively, so A&M has to change what they do defensively. And DJ Durkin didn't have Sam Williams to come bail him out this time. And all of a sudden, now it's a 75-yard touchdown pass. And now it's these chunk plays to Ra Thomas and to Justin Robinson and to Tulu Griffin. If State can run the football, they're gonna score points. They're gonna move the football. So, and next week is interesting because Arkansas is so bad at pass defense. They're just so bad at it that I don't know what you do with the run game there. But I feel like, you've got to get the ball to Johnson and Marks. They're good players. You want them to have the ball, and it's working right now.
I was listening a little bit to Tom Luganville and Barrett Sallee yesterday. They do a college football Sunday show on satellite radio. And Luganville asked Barrett, he's like, if you had to pick a roster right now, would you take Texas A&M's roster or Mississippi State's roster? And Barrett paused for a second, and he answered the way you would expect. He answered, Texas A&M's roster. The point that Luganville was making then it comes down to coaching, right? And they were in agreement on that. But are we sure that right now you would rather have Texas A&M's roster than Mississippi State's roster? Mississippi State's better at quarterback. They're better at receiver.
I would rather have Mississippi State's roster with Will Rogers. The fact that A&M is bad at quarterbacks.
You'd rather have Texas A&M's roster with Will Rogers.
Texas A&M's roster with Will Rogers. The fact that A&M is bad at quarterback spoils everything. You can't do anything when you're bad at quarterback. You just can't.
A&M's not good at wide receiver. They're not good at tight end.
With Anaya Smith out, yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay, I'll give you A-Chain over the combination of Johnson and Marks, but not by a lot. I think that's two pretty good running backs for Mississippi State. Evan Stewart, this may be incredible down the line. He had 4 catches against Mississippi State. Bulldogs had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys that had 4 catches or more. I'm just not 100% sure that I would take A&M's roster right now over Mississippi State's. And I don't even know if we have to do the comparing him. Hey, Dad, we have talked openly about the fact that there are Mississippi State fans who are not necessarily on the Mike Leach bandwagon. Mm-hmm. Did he win some supporters over on Saturday?
If he didn't, then you have a higher standard of Mississippi State football than you probably should. I feel like sometimes somebody was talking about it on a message board. I feel like State fans sometimes watch these games in a vacuum. Like, oh, well, State won, but they did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. And it's like they just think everybody else in the country is winning perfect. Like, LSU just went out there to Auburn and just dominated that game from start to finish and had no problems. I don't get it sometimes. Everybody wins games because the other team makes mistakes every now and then. So I think for the most part, yeah, he had to pick up some supporters this week. But at the same time, I'm interested to see what the crowd looks like on Saturday.
The people that have that particular take did not watch any other college football this weekend, or don't, outside of Mississippi State. That's the only way you can have that take at this point.
I would say there's only one team that has been basically flawless this year, and that team is Ohio State. And even they kind of fiddle-farted around with Notre Dame a little bit in the opener.
They were losing at the half with Notre Dame.
Yeah, Stroud struggled in that one.
It was the opener, though. But yes, if we're saying, I think Ohio State has put together the most complete body of work so far this year.
You could argue Clemson is number 2 in terms of body of work and schedule. NC State's no joke, man, and they controlled that game from start to finish.
Yeah, it's just crazy, right? You look at Alabama, who goes back to number 1 despite having fewer first-place votes than Georgia. And by the way, they should have jumped Georgia. Georgia did not play like the number 1 team in the country on Friday night. Alabama was fortunate to escape Austin with a win over Texas, and that game got real tight for a little bit in Fayetteville in the third quarter. Georgia did what they had to do to win against Missouri on Saturday night, but it got to the point where it looked like it might be shaky. I don't think anybody watching that game ever thought Georgia was going to actually lose. But then you look up and you're like, they're still down 10. Wait, they're still down 10.
They got bullied up front. Stetson Bennett wasn't particularly good either.
He was not. I need to see more from Michigan.
Weird game.
Yeah, it was. I need to see more from Michigan. Clemson's been pretty good, and DJ Uiagalelei has put together back-to-back really solid games at quarterback.
Especially being critical about this game. This was the game. Sometimes you win games because your offense just outscores an opponent, right? Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you win games because your defense plays well and makes plays late. Shout out Ole Miss. Mississippi State beat Texas A&M on the line of scrimmage. Rogers wasn't sacked. They beat them in the turnover battle. A couple of interceptions, couple of forced fumbles. They beat them in special teams. Blocked field goal turned into a touchdown. They beat them. There was one drive in the second half where A&M scored a touchdown, and then State kind of methodically just worked their way down the field in a long drive and scored a touchdown. And then, their next possession, took the top off of A&M's defense and scored an explosive 75-yard touchdown.
That was one play drive there.
They beat A&M in every way. They didn't win because of defense. Well, they did, but not just because of defense. They didn't just win because of this or just win because of that. They won on defense, special teams, turnovers, Explosive plays, methodical drives, too many penalties.
All of it.
Too many penalties, but you don't play perfect football. Nobody does, including Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, etc. That was as good of a feeling as you should have after a win in the 2 years and 5 games that you've seen Mike Leach coach at State.
Are we ready